to get to peace, I had to go through forgiveness. And there are so many different levels of forgiveness. And what I really want to start with is we always have this connotation around forgiveness that something or someone has to be wrong.
Mm,
And that's
so
not
true.
always the case. Often it is. And yet, if we took that element of judgment out of the forgiveness process and we looked at forgiveness as peace, if we looked at forgiveness as healing, if we looked at forgiveness as creating space and opportunity for new things to come our way, I think that we could move through it with more ease. If we are holding on to the anger, or we're holding on to the need for vengeance, we are still attached to what happened to us and not the
Yep.
possibility of what can be. So I am Roz Clark, the Dream Doula. And it's really interesting that we're talking about this because the work that I do is I am changing the lives of women who are destined to change the world. And yet,
Mm,
in doing that, with the work that I do, it's all around finding that freedom lifestyle that gives you the opportunity to use your gifts, do what you love in a way that is affirming for you in your life, it's affirming for you in your work, and it's affirming to the people that you serve. And I say all the time that our dreams are the roadmap to our destiny. That part of us that's crying out to be lived, that's what we're here for. And
yeah.
I believe that everything else begins to set us up to live and operate in that space. Now more than ever, it is time to show up as the best and highest version of yourself and use your voice. We need your voice now more than ever. And so many times people are like, but Roz, how can I make a difference? Or there's so much going on, I don't even know where to start. And what I can say is you start with who you are, how you show up in the world, and the thing that matters most to you. And I was fortunate enough to learn that at a very young age. When I was in 7th grade, my course teacher pulled me aside because he saw me playing small. And he said to me, listen. And I was like, what? Like, listen, Linda. And I just looked and he said, if you've got it, don't apologize for it, flaunt it. And when I tell you, that set me free. And I have carried that with me for the rest of my life. And so I have shown up fully and authentically as myself, and I've taken that passion and that energy, and I'm helping other women to do the same. And that's why I want to share this particular episode with you. I was invited to be a guest of the brilliant Crystal Johnson on her We Ain't Dying for This podcast. And we had the most inspiring conversation, insightful and inspiring, because Crystal's message and mission is to save Black women who are trying to save the world. She's like, you can't save the world until you save yourself first. And so our conversation was all around forgiveness as liberation. And like I said, it was a robust, inspiring, transparent, vulnerable conversation, and I couldn't wait to share it with you. So Crystal was gracious enough to give me permission to share the replay. And so I want you to come to this episode like open and ready, because when we get done, the next right step is for you to begin to speak out, for you to begin to use your voice. So I really trust and believe that this episode is going to serve you. I'm excited for you to watch it. And please, leave a comment. If you haven't already done it, make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell so that you're notified every time I drop an episode. And I just want to remind you, speak up. Use your voice, show up. The world needs you. As Maya says, speak your truth, even if your voice trembles. So enjoy the episode. I look forward to hearing from you. Be well. Peace.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of We Ain't Dying for This. I am your host, Crystal Johnson, and I help Black women who are saving the world to save themselves first. Really excited this week to talk about forgiveness as liberation with my friend Roz Clark. Roz, thank you so much for joining us to have this timely conversation about forgiveness as liberation. But before we get into the conversation, as always, I would love if you are listening in, if you can let us know where you're listening in from. And if there is a Black woman that you believe would benefit from this conversation, please share this live with her. And while I wait for folks to come in and actually start interacting in the chat, for anyone who has never listened to this live, if you have been under a whole rock and you've actually never seen We Ain't Dying for This, I created this live series because Black women are frankly dying. And we are dying because we are carrying the weight of the world. We are deprioritizing ourselves and prioritizing everyone else above ourselves. So it was very important for me to create this space where we can talk about ways in which we are experiencing liberation from our perspective, because we often hear no one is liberated unless we're all liberated. And I don't believe that that's completely true. I think we can all experience liberation in different ways, whether it's through the way we parent today, the way we love ourselves, the way that we approach healing, forgiveness, as we're talking about today. So we all have that opportunity to experience liberation. We can't move forward in a way that feels all or nothing, because if we do that, how would we experience joy? How will we live? Because there's always going to be something going on and something that's wrong. So really excited for y'all to join in on this conversation. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation.
I
Yes.
got you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me first and foremost. And just let me take this moment to honor you for taking an idea and a commitment that you made first and foremost to yourself, and
Mhm.
then shared it out into a community that needs it. So I just wanted to say that I see you, I appreciate you, and I celebrate you for showing up like this, sis.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you want me to just like just jump in with
Well,
what
I
we're
want
doing?
you to tell people who you are and what you do.
So cool. Yeah. So I am Roz Clark, the Dream Doula. And it's really interesting that we're talking about this because the work that I do is I am changing the lives of women who are destined to change the world. And yet,
Mm,
in doing that, with the work that I do, it's all around finding that freedom lifestyle that gives you the opportunity to use your gifts, do what you love in a way that is affirming for you in your life, it's affirming for you in your work, and it's affirming to the people that you serve. So there is this beautiful alchemy of getting in touch with how you show up in the world and how we're meant to serve, how we're meant to experience life. Because I think so many times, like you're already saying, we jump straight to service. Like, oh,
mhm.
fix it. I got to save them. I got to EIEIO. And yet, what we haven't really tapped into is what makes my heart sing? What is my
Yeah.
passion? So it's all around helping women to dial into their passion, dial into their gift, and then create a narrative and a dialogue that creates a freedom lifestyle brand to let them do what they love in a way that makes sense for them.
Mm, I love that. I absolutely love it. And I think it goes back to one of the conversations that we had recently. I think it was last week. We talked about the fact that we have options. And I think people often believe that we don't have options to do the thing that brings us joy, the thing that sets our heart on fire, that those things aren't really going to pay us, but they actually do. You have options. You don't have to sit in something that, or a place where you don't feel appreciated, where you don't feel welcome, where you don't feel valued. You are the value.
Yes.
You are
Yes.
the value.
100%. And I think especially like when you talk about women in corporate, you are contributing to multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar industries. And how can you think that, well, I don't know what to do or I don't know how to show up in the world? It's like, you're making such a profound difference already.
Mhm.
And yet we don't take those wonderful gifts and skills that we have and apply them to our dreams. And I say all the
Mhm.
time that our dreams are the roadmap to our destiny. That part of us that's crying out to be lived, that's what we're here for. And
Yeah.
I believe that everything else begins to set us up to live and operate in that space.
Yeah, you're giving me chills because when I think about the retreat that I had in August where I welcomed some amazing Black women into a space, the purpose of that space was to give them room to dream. It gave them room to step away from the everyday, all the things that they're normally connected to and worried about. And they just had the room to just exist, to be, and to dream. And through that experience, some of them have reached out to me to say, you know what, like this experience really helped me to take action on the thing that I know is my purpose or the thing that I know that I'm passionate about. But because you gave me that space to dream, now I'm actually able to act and do the thing that I need to do to make that thing real. So that gave me chills for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it's true because like one of the programs I do, it's called Awaken, and we awaken to our dreams because so many times our dreams have been minimalized. You know, like for me,
Mhm.
I'm a classical soprano. That's how I started my life. I'm a
Yeah.
classical soprano who turned 21 in Paris. And the flip of that is I grew up in a blue collar working class neighborhood, and people are like, girl, nobody from here does that. And so people want to
Yeah.
tell you, stop dreaming, get your head out of the clouds. And yet the truth is, again, when we awaken to our dreams, when we awaken to what we know we've been put here to do, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah. Unstoppable, girl. You
Yeah,
unstoppable.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So, with all of that being said, can you tell us why are we talking about forgiveness today and how does that connect to your story?
So one, I think that forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools that we have available to ourselves. And yet I believe that there's a lot of misinformation around forgiveness. There is some energy around forgiveness that doesn't serve us. And so I'm super passionate about, talking about the path to forgiveness. And so for me, myself personally, as the kids would say, you know,
Mhm.
um, there's always something to forgive in life. So probably the biggest thing for me right now was my journey of leaving a toxic and dysfunctional marriage after 30 years. And I was planning it out because I'm a planner, and then things just went 50 shades of crazy, totally left, and I had to leave sooner than I anticipated. And so I
Mhm.
went through 3 months of homelessness in that process. And after that process, it's still, I had the tools of my mindfulness practice, my prayer practice, my yoga practice, all of those things that I knew that I was going to be all right, even though things had turned upside down unexpectedly. And so within a year's time, I went from that 3 months of homelessness to
Mm.
returning to Paris. Like I just told you, I turned 21 in Paris. I returned to Paris to celebrate my 60th birthday. And what I tell everybody is that I celebrated my birth and my rebirth.
Mm.
And
So
so
good.
in that process, because when I knew that I could no longer stay in that situation, the only thing that I wanted was peace. I was like, I just want peace. I just want peace in my life. And through my practices, to get to peace, I had to go through forgiveness. And there are so many different levels of forgiveness. And what really want to start with is we always have this connotation around forgiveness that something or someone has to be wrong.
Mm.
And that's not
Real.
always the case. Often it is. And yet, if we took that element of judgment out of the forgiveness process and we looked at forgiveness as peace, if we looked at forgiveness as healing, if we looked at forgiveness as creating space and opportunity for new things to come our way, I think that we could move through it with more ease. So now,
Mm.
having said all of that, that was not my journey at first because I was mad as hell. It was like,
I believe it. Yeah.
so like, let me just tell you, it was not rainbows and unicorns and all of that. I did the work through the process. And yet, what I can say now is this sense of profound peace that I have in being able to release. And so, one of the things, the language that I use is in finding forgiveness, you have to learn how to release people to the outcomes of their choices. And so if anybody's taking notes, write that down and just journal around that and put it in your meditation process. How do I release people to the outcomes of their choices? And here's the rich part, without being attached to what those outcomes are or needing to see those outcomes.
Hmm.
Because typically when you start with that, like, oh, I'm just going to release you to the outcomes of your choices, like we've got that energy around it.
Yeah.
And that energy is also, because karma is a bitch, because you're going to get yours. And yet if we put that energy towards that release, it's not them who's suffering, it's us.
Yes.
And while it sounds cliche, like, well, forgiveness is for you, if you don't really understand what that means energetically
Yeah.
and spiritually, because when you've spent time with people, I don't care if you're in a job situation that isn't working out, a relationship situation that isn't working out, your community, your church, your sorority, your whatever club or whatever that thing is, that we create community around that, we create soul ties to that. And so if we are holding on to the anger or we're holding on to the need for vengeance, we are still attached to what happened to us and not the
Yes.
possibility of what can be. And that does take work. And yet that's how we move through that. So as I move through that time, and I am the mom of an adult son with special needs as well. And so, and it's all on me.
Mhm.
I've got my son completely. We haven't seen or heard from his father in years, and it just is what it is. And so I could easily judge. I could easily say, whatever. And yet, more importantly, what my focus is how do I create the best and highest version of who I'm meant to be, the life that I want to live, and how I want to care for and serve my family that is now my son, myself. I have a daughter as well, that we
Mhm.
have become this nuclear family. And so if I put my energy on what somebody has not done or what I perceive to have been done to me, it doesn't allow me the space, the room, the creativity to live the best and highest version of myself.
Yeah, and it doesn't allow you to heal because you
Exactly.
continue to tell that story over and over and over again of all the things that the person didn't do because you attached yourself to whatever outcome you were looking to see. I remember when I separated from my wife in 2022 and literally, I'm sorry, wait, was it 2022, girl? The years are just passing by fast. I think it was 2021. See, that's how detached I am.
Yes. Yes.
So I believe it was 2021, but I was so angry. I was so angry with her. And I just wanted karma for her.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, "Oh, you need something? Oh, I'm not. No, absolutely not. Because you did all these things to me, and I'm not willing to support you in any way, whether it's me giving you a nice word or me giving you a dollar. Like, no, I'm unwilling to do any of it." And
Yeah.
when I was able to forgive and let that go, that was for me
Yeah.
because I was carrying around a lot of anger, a lot of stress, and a lot of rage, um, based on what I perceived had been done to me.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's so interesting because you hit on something two really important things. So that part of releasing that anger and what that anger, that rage, all of those things are. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more. one of the experiences that we have, what I always say is if it doesn't come out of your mouth, it's going to show up in your body.
Yes.
And so when we talk about rage, the rage that we're carrying in our bodies, like for me, I was diagnosed with RA, which is an autoimmune disease. And that's your body turning on itself,
Yeah.
attacking itself. And so of course it's attacking it because you're carrying this stuff that is foreign and this stuff that is hurtful and harmful. And your immune system's trying to do the best that it can, saying, well, what is this? How do I fix it? How do I get it out?
Yeah.
And what it really is us learning how to let go. And not in a way that makes us like we can let people go and never see them again or never engage with them again. And yet that energy of I am never speaking to you again in life, it doesn't have to have that energy. It can
Yeah.
be the energy of go in peace. And for my peace, I have to set these boundaries, and you are no longer allowed in my space. And that
Mm-hmm.
starts again with us because first we let them into our headspace. That's saying people are living rent free in your head, you
Yeah.
know, and until we evict them and make room for the new tenant. And the new tenant may be love, and the new tenant may be creativity, and the new tenant may be, um, you know, uh, joy, peace, whatever that
Yeah.
is. That when we make that room for that new tenant, it also allows us to become a different person, you
Yes.
know, because what we then do is take those lessons and take those experiences, and again, without the judgment. So it's not like, well, how did you stay in a crazy marriage for 30 years? The better question is, what did you learn in 30 years that you can save and serve someone else?
Yeah.
And not in a rescuing place, but in a place that I say for my clients all the time is I want you to have the benefit of my knowledge and experience without having to bear my scars.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I
Absolutely.
get to serve from that place of knowing.
Yeah. And thank you so much for being vulnerable about your story in terms of your marriage and then obviously subsequent homelessness for a short period of time. Being reborn in Paris. I love that so much. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
You talked about like how the things that we don't let go, they show up in your body. So
Mhm.
earlier this week, I sent you a video. I sent you a video that I found on TikTok because I be scrolling, y'all. And this woman, she said that the leading cause of autoimmune diseases in Black women are stress and anger.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's so real.
Yeah.
That's so real. So I decided to do a little more digging and actually found a study. Well, it's an article about a study, and I'm going to pull it up right now. So it's an article from the Atlanta Tribune that actually was published in July of this year. And the name of the article is Silent Rage is a Hidden Health Crisis Among Women of Color, Fueling Autoimmune Diseases. And it says that a recent study led by Stanford medicine scientists revealed how women of color are more prone to developing autoimmune disorders from internalizing their feelings and emotions.
Yeah.
And I know that there are some of us when we are angry, we talk about it. When we are stressed, we talk about it. But there are a lot of us who do internalize whatever it is that's going on around us, whether it's anger at work or anger with a partner, our kids, our family, our community, whomever it is. I, for one, in my own experience, have just walked away from things
Mhm.
and not said a word, but it's still bothering me. It's
Right.
it's still bothering me. But I've walked away from it, as you mentioned before. It's like the energy is, yes, I walked away, but I'm still mad.
Yeah.
So I'm still carrying it around, and it's still in my body, even though I'm not communicating with that person, even though I've set the boundary, they still living rent free in my
Right.
body and in my head. So what other ways does stress? Does not forgiving, does silent rage, does anger show up for us mentally, emotionally, physically?
So yeah, one of the big things, like we're talking about this anger and this rage. And so, there's always the trope of the angry Black woman, you
Mhm.
know, and part of it's a trope because it's rooted in some truth. Because we have been, and I can speak for myself, I'm always the strong one. From the time I
Mhm.
was a child, I was rewarded for being the strong one. So if you're rewarded for being the strong one, you're like, oh, I need to carry this because that's what brings value. That's my
Yeah.
value, is my strength. So I'm going to take all of this crazy stuff because that's strong and I get applauded for that. And yet there's nowhere for that anger, that pain. And here's the thing, too, even the language that we put around it, anger feels more powerful than fear.
Mm.
Anger feels more powerful than hurt because sometimes I'm not really angry, I'm hurt.
Yeah.
Or I'm not really angry. And this is a word that I really had to struggle with to make peace with. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. And I don't say that often, but like, I am the mother of an adult son with special needs who is solely dependent on me
Mm.
because his father walked away and said, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't have that privilege. I don't have the privilege of being overwhelmed or the privilege of being whatever. That's not an option for me. And so and I used to use this language a lot, while I man up and do what I need to do. Like, think about
Mm.
that. I'm a man up and do what I'm supposed to do. And yet, what I really finally realized is this is scary.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, what if, and I won't even finish it because I'm very careful with my words. So, when we look at how do we deal with the experiences that we are having, part of it comes with how we language it.
Mm.
So really be brave enough. And so here's the flip: be brave enough to not go to anger and go there and explore what fear looks like. And who are you in fear? Explore what hurt looks like and who are you hurt, so that you don't have to create this caricature of I'm strong and I can take this. We have done this for generations. This is who we are. This is what we
Yeah.
do. No, there's a part of us that says, I need my sister. I need my brother. And I mean, thank God for the men in my life who did come and walk alongside me. My brothers are the most amazing people in the world. And I think sometimes, like, we as sisters, we know how to come around one another. We know how to
Mhm.
create that circle. And sometimes I think it's important to honor the men who stand in the gap in our lives too, to honor them for how they show up as the uncle, the father, the friend, whatever that is. And so creating community around the language that we need to develop so that we can say what we're thinking and what we're feeling
Yeah.
without trying to couch it. And like, a lot of my work is around storytelling. And it's storytelling for business, because you attract your dream client because your dream client can see themselves in your story. And yet
Mhm.
the first story starts with, what is the story I'm telling myself?
Yes, absolutely.
What story are we telling ourselves? And then what role are we casting ourselves in that we have been taught to be, rather than, again, the exploration of, what if I brought the fullness of all of my emotions into my life? What if I made room for that exploration and then found community, whether it's community with a coach, community with our tribe, community with, like I said, our brothers, whoever that is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be big community, but build community around the ability to explore everything. And so in my process of rebirth, it was important for me to go back to Paris because now I was 21 my first time there. So I'm this Black classical soprano in Paris, and like we toured all of France and sang in the greatest cathedrals. And it was my dream, and it was the story that I told myself that I can do this and I can be this. And so going back at 60, it was like, I didn't need to recapture my youth, but I did need to honor that fearless young woman who turned 21 in Paris and find a way to incorporate her back into the woman, the doula, the server, the soldier, the oracle that I have become through all of the experiences that I've had.
Yeah, I'm so glad you were able to reclaim and honor her in that moment, for
Yeah.
sure, because I can relate to feeling like there are certain pieces of you that get lost, and I was talking to someone earlier today, and they helped me to reframe this thought, and I'm thinking, like, lost, never to be found again, but she was like, "No, it's still there, it's just hidden."
Mhm.
It's just hidden because the experiences that we have, the hurt and trauma that we experience causes that us then, I guess, is what I'll call it, to just shrink.
Yes.
So it's still there. It's buried under a lot of stuff, but she's still there. So good for you for reclaiming and being able to honor her on your 60th birthday.
Yeah. Yeah. And in doing that, we as women like you said, reclaiming her, because sometimes we even make her small because she made everybody else so uncomfortable. So we
Mm,
we learn how to become small just to keep people from not feeling uncomfortable. And yet again, that part of us that is crying out to be lived, that larger than life part of us, that joyful part of us, that introspective part of us, whatever part of us that made people that felt like too much for other people. And so we just kind of dimmed it or hid it.
yeah.
That part is so important to revisit. And so that's like, again, the work that I want to do, the work that I do with women, that it's so important that we create a safe space. Just like, on your retreat, your ladies were like, oh my God, I get to dream again. I forgot about her.
Mhm.
And there are gifts that we have that, like, this was actually a male cousin who passed away not too long ago. And I was talking to him and I said, oh, cuz, do you still draw? And he was like, baby girl, I haven't thought about that in years. And he was an incredible artist.
Yeah.
And yet life happened to him and whatever. And he forgot that he was an artist. And so, what part of us have we forgotten? What part of us have we left behind? And what would happen if we incorporate that part back into our lives?
Mm. That is profound. So, obviously, if y'all are listening and you want to delve into your dream, Roz is the dream doula. So, talk to Roz
Yeah, absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. So, I do want to say hello to Missy. And then also, Risha said something that I've actually never heard before, but I can see it. Some people say depression is anger without enthusiasm.
Mm, that's
Have you ever
beautiful.
heard that before?
I've
Yeah.
not. That is really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then what you also made me think about when you talked about language and having the language to describe what it is that you're thinking and what it is that you're feeling. There's also, and I don't know the official name for it, but like an emotion wheel where you're able to actually better understand emotions because a lot of us have very limited language when it comes to how it is that we're feeling, that we're mad, that we're angry, we're sad, we're happy. But those things are very basic in comparison to all the different emotions that we could be feeling, like fear or being afraid, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And, the better we get with words, the better that our life is, the better that our business is, the better that our relationships are. Everything revolves around language. And what we
Mhm.
miss sometimes is how powerful language is. So I'm like, I'm really, really mindful of language. So when we say, as a person thinks and speaks, so shall they be, like
Mm.
sometimes it's a throwaway, but we have the ability to speak life into situations, to speak things that don't exist into the world. Like right now, we are talking and communicating and sharing through somebody's dream. Somebody had a dream about what Zoom or the internet or whatever it was going to look like. We are living inside of somebody's dream right now. So that's why it is so important that we honor our dreams and that we do put language around those
Mhm.
things that we believe ourselves to be. We believe ourselves to be called to. You know, I have to be really clear on how I articulate who I am and how I show up in the world. And at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm doubly mindful about what I speak about other people. Like, you'll never hear me say my son is his diagnosis. I can say what his diagnosis is, but he is not that. So many
Mhm.
people will say, well, my arthritis, my whatever, my migraines. Why are you claiming that stuff as yours? You may experience
Mhm.
it, and
Yes.
yet you don't have to own it. And if you put language around it that owns it, it's staying.
Yeah. I'm really gonna consider that as I think about all the things that I talk about and that I'm actually speaking life into. So you've definitely given me something to think about in terms of how it is that I'm talking or speaking, how I'm using my words and communicating, how it is that I'm feeling or what it is that I'm thinking because that's so true. Like we can speak life into anything and
Yeah,
that's negative things or positive things.
absolutely. Absolutely. And again, when we talk about our stories,
Mhm.
what role do we cast ourselves in? So, like going back to what I said about being the strong one, I got rewarded for that. So I identified with that. So I told myself I'm the strong one. And yet I didn't make any space for the hurt one. I didn't make
Yeah.
any space for the angry one. And so, again, the stories that we tell, the language that we use creates our world and worlds for others.
Yeah.
As coaches, as a retreat host, you spoke that situation into being. You set the atmosphere with your words and your intentions, and those women lived into that. We
Yeah.
all have the power to do that. And sometimes we just don't know what we're called to. And that's why we need a coach, we need a mentor, we need a doula to help us give birth to who we are really meant to be.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, forgiveness.
Yes.
What are some tips for forgiving? So before you before you get before because we gotta we gotta forgive before we can get to making ourselves better or doing the things that we get into the thing that we're called to do or our passion. Like we gotta let go of all the other things that we're holding and carrying and that are living rent free in our head.
Yeah.
So there is this exercise or this book that Jan Love Van Zant wrote, and let me find the title of it. So the title of that book is called Forgiveness: 21 Days to Forgive Everyone for Everything.
Wow.
Um, and then there's like all these different exercises, and I have actually not gone through the process. I was working with this coach a few years ago, and that was actually one of the exercises that she wanted us to go through. And actually, she has appeared on this show, like in one of the earlier episodes, Christy Rutherford, when she talked about happiness as liberation. So I've been wanting to do the forgiveness exercise and I haven't done it because I'm a little nervous to know what's going to come up when I go through this exercise. But something that that you've said several times during this conversation is about judgment and
Hmm.
how, like, letting go of judgment, just skimming through some of the pages. like that word continuously does come up because it's something that we're connected to. Like we're judging the situation, we're connected to the outcome. And that's the reason why it's so hard for us to actually forgive.
Mhm.
So, my tribute, y'all, is 21 Days of Forgiveness by Ayanla. But Roz is the expert here. So, Roz, tell us
So,
how we forgive.
first and foremost, we set an intention. We have to set an intention. And again, it's not easy. So even if the intention is, I want to heal. So, like for me, like I told you, when I started, my intention was to create peace, to live in peace. That was the
Mhm.
intention. The path was through forgiveness. And so when I got to that, it was like, oh my God, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
And so it really is about finding a practice. It's about finding what works best for you. And like that's so because there's so many modalities. Like one of the things that I'm working with right now, something that I just recently came across, and it's a Hawaiian prayer meditation called Ho'oponopono. And it's based upon four principles. It says, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I'm grateful.
Mm.
And in that process of forgiving, because again, we want to forgive the other person because that makes us feel lifted, because they need to be forgiven.
Right.
And
Because
yet,
they did
what if
something wrong.
I'm the one? Yeah, because
Mhm.
I was involved in this. And there's this one part she says, for the memories that I share with you, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I'm grateful. So, even for the memories that we
Mm.
have, the memories that we choose to hold on to, that finding that way of saying, does this serve me? Does this create a more peaceful existence for myself and the person that I choose to release? And there's
Mhm.
actually another whole theory, and we won't go into it today, but I just want to throw it out there just if people want to play with it, is that there's nothing to be forgiven,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
Like there's nothing to be forgiven because one, the moment that we say we forgive, that means that we judge, that means that we elevate ourselves over the person or the situation. And so, if all things are in divine order, there's nothing to be forgiven. Now, that takes a whole lot of work, and I'm still playing with some of that,
Yeah.
and yet, like, just if somebody's just starting and saying, oh man, God, I just want this to be over, I don't want to feel like this anymore,
Mhm.
then just start with, I don't want to feel like this anymore. What's the first step that I can take to not feeling like this anymore? And sometimes we just have to say it until we can live into it because, again, we're speaking it into being. So I am living in peace. I love the prayer of Corrie Ten Bloom when she was in the concentration camp. And I believe it was her sister that died. And her
Mm.
prayer was, God, I'm not strong enough to love them right now. So will you please love them through me?
Mm.
And so being that vessel of forgiveness, that vessel of peace, that vessel of joy, so that if we don't have it within ourselves, whatever the higher power that you call on, that you believe in, that you rely upon, just open yourself up and say, I can't do it. So can you do it through me? I allow you, I welcome you, I invite you to be forgiveness for me and be forgiveness through me until I'm able to be that for myself.
Mhm. Yeah, I love just like judgment, prayer comes up in that ritual as well. And I don't typically read things that are real long on this show, but I would love to be able to read this prayer of forgiveness that comes from this book. Precious and beloved God, my source, my creator, today I ask for and open myself to receive the strength, courage, and compassion required to forgive myself. I forgive myself for all perceived sins, faults, mistakes, and failings. I forgive myself for every thought, belief, behavior, perception, and emotion that I have told myself is bad, wrong, unjust, unloving, and displeasing to you. I forgive for every hurt, judgment, condemnation, unkind, or unloving thought, belief, and perception I have held about or against myself. I forgive myself for any behaviors, habits, or actions motivated by unforgiveness, the unwillingness to forgive myself. I forgive myself with compassion and love. I ask for, accept, and claim God's forgiveness today, believing and knowing that because I have asked, I have received. I'm so grateful. I let it be, and so it is.
And so
So,
it is.
yes. And yeah, like the practice you were talking about, like being grateful, loving, it all just comes together.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I just think start with an intention. Set your intention without pressure or judgment. Coming back to
Yeah.
that judgment, allowing
Hmm.
yourself to be that, and then be mindful of your words, your thoughts, and your deeds, and tell a better story. Because at the end of the day, if we are the author of our story, if we can change
Yeah.
the narrative, why would we not write a story where we win and we are the best and highest version of who we're meant to be?
Shut up talking to me, Roz. I got work to do. I got work to do.
We
For
all do.
sure. Yeah, I have seen that I got a lot of work, more work than I thought that I needed to
Mm,
do. But I'm so appreciative of this conversation. And I think it's a perfect note to end season one on about forgiveness as liberation, because we are literally holding ourselves hostage, standing in unforgiveness or being unwilling to forgive. And it doesn't mean that, the person, like, we may not get to the point that you mentioned that there's nothing to forgive. I don't see a lot of people get in there. But being able to forgive is really going to set us free. It's going to get all the anger, the silent rage, the um silent rage, the stress out of our body. So then we are not welcoming in disease. Um,
yes.
and I think, when I think about liberation or when I think about happiness or anything, we are in control.
Yes.
So if we are in control, then we got to do the things that we got to do for us to feel free, for us to feel liberated, for us to feel whole, so we can experience abundance and joy and ease, all the things. Because we want all of that for every Black woman who's tuning in.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a choice. Like you said, it's absolutely a choice.
Yeah. Roz, thank you. To anyone who is still listening, whether you're team live or team replay, don't forget, the bad news is this is the last live episode of season one of the We Ain't Dying for This vodcast. However, you can catch all of the recordings on the Living Corporate Network, because that is where we will deposit all of them. All of them are not there yet, but they will be coming to the Living Corporate Network soon. So thank you, everyone who has supported this season. Thank you, Roz, for being here. You did an amazing job, girl. You said no pressure, but the pressure was good because you did it.
Thank you.
You did an amazing job. I think this was a perfect way to wrap up the season. So thank you so much for everything. Everyone, again, thank you for tuning in. And we'll obviously have some clips that'll be coming through to kind of remind you all of the conversations that we've had with brilliant Black women throughout this year, and direct you to where you can watch the full episode, of
Yeah.
course. So I hope everyone has a great weekend. And for those folks who are in the path of the storm, be safe out there.
Namaste.